Mainly, I found out I told stories because I was nervous about my singing and playing.
John Prine was known as one of the kindest people in music. The gentle poet who gave us songs like Angel from Montgomery and Sam Stone seemed to have endless compassion for broken souls. His self-deprecating humor and warm smile made him appear to be the most gentle man in the music world. But behind that friendly face lived a songwriter with surprisingly sharp opinions and zero tolerance for what he saw as fake music. While Prine's public image was all folksy charm and Midwestern niceness, he could be devastatingly critical of artists he thought were frauds or sellouts. He had no patience for songwriters who forgot that music should tell honest stories about real people. From country superstars who gave up authenticity for big arena shows, to folk singers who pretended to be common people. There were several bands that made Prine's famously kind heart turn cold. This wasn't about typical celebrity feuds. These were artistic integrity wars fought by one of music's most beloved truth-tellers. Prine had some surprisingly cutting observations about certain artists, and his criticism came from his deep belief that music should be honest and real. Alabama. The country superstars who lost their way. Alabama was a country supergroup whose slick production and stadium-sized ambitions rubbed Prine completely wrong. His irritation with Alabama centered on how they transformed country music from intimate storytelling into corporate entertainment. He viewed their polished harmonies and arena rock arrangements as a betrayal of country music's working-class roots. Prine once described their sound as country music for people who've never met an actual farmer. The frustration grew when Alabama dominated country radio throughout the 1980s. While authentic singer-songwriters struggled to get airplay, Prine couldn't understand how audiences embraced what he considered sanitized rebellion. He told friends that Alabama represented fake populism for suburbanites who wanted to feel rural without getting their boots dirty. What particularly bothered Prine was Alabama's patriotic messaging and conservative politics wrapped in feel-good melodies. He saw their approach as manipulative pandering to audiences who preferred simple answers to complex problems. He described their songs as bumper sticker philosophy set to guitar solos. The tipping point came when Alabama made statements about country music's responsibility to celebrate American values. Prine's response was characteristically subtle, but cutting. He suggested that real country music should question authority rather than cheerleader for it. He believed Alabama's version of patriotism was flag-waving for people who had never experienced what they were supposedly defending. Prine's distaste for Alabama reflected his belief that country music should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, not provide easy comfort to people avoiding difficult truths about American life. Hootie and the Blowfish. The feel-good problem. Hootie and the Blowfish's mainstream rock accessibility and relentless positivity made Prine question the direction of popular music. His bewilderment with Hootie began with their massive commercial success, despite what he considered a complete lack of artistic depth. He viewed Darius Rucker's earnest vocals and the band's radio-friendly arrangements as proof that audiences had lost interest in songs with genuine emotional weight. Prine once described their music as happiness for people who've never experienced actual joy. The annoyance escalated when Hootie became crossover superstars, dominating both rock and country radio with their feel-good anthems. Prine couldn't comprehend how their uncomplicated optimism resonated with millions, while more complex songwriting remained marginalized. He told journalists that Hootie proved people prefer musical comfort food to actual nourishment. What really bothered Prine was Hootie's influence on younger songwriters who began copying their safe, accessible approach. He saw them as responsible for dumbing down popular music's emotional vocabulary, describing their impact as teaching writers that depth is less important than likability. The breaking point occurred when Rucker made comments about music's power to unite people and spread positivity. Prine's reaction was gentle but devastating. He argued that real music should acknowledge life's darkness alongside its light, and that Hootie's relentless cheerfulness was emotional dishonesty disguised as inspiration. Prine's criticism of Hootie embodied his belief that authentic songwriting required willingness to explore uncomfortable truths rather than provide easy reassurance. Creed. The spiritual manipulation. Creed's pseudo-spiritual rock anthems and manufactured profundity made Prine physically uncomfortable. His revulsion toward Creed stemmed from what he saw as their cynical appropriation of religious imagery for commercial gain. He viewed Scott Stapp's messianic stage presence and the band's spiritual themes as calculated manipulation of audiences seeking meaning. Prine once described their approach as faith-based marketing for people who confuse volume with revelation. The disgust intensified when Creed achieved massive sales with their Christian-adjacent rock anthems. Prine couldn't stomach their ability to package spirituality for mass consumption while avoiding any genuine theological complexity. He told friends that Creed represented religion without sacrifice, faith without doubt. What pushed Prine to open criticism was Creed's influence on Christian rock and their mainstream acceptance despite what he considered theological emptiness. He saw them as responsible for commercializing sacred themes, describing their success as proof that audiences prefer spiritual fast food to actual contemplation. The explosive moment came when Stapp made statements about rock music's evangelical potential and the band's mission to spread positive messages. Prine's response was unusually direct. He suggested that Creed's version of spirituality was performance art for people who want to feel saved without being challenged, arguing that real faith required questioning rather than certainty. Prine's condemnation of Creed reflected his belief that authentic spiritual music should embrace mystery and doubt rather than provide easy answers wrapped in power chords. Nickelback. The emotional assembly line. Nickelback's formulaic rock anthems and calculated emotion represented everything Prine found soulless about modern music. His contempt for Nickelback was rooted in their mechanical approach to songwriting and their ability to manufacture hits through market research rather than genuine inspiration. He viewed Chad Kroeger's lyrics and the band's predictable arrangements as proof that music had become completely industrialized. Prine once described their process as emotional assembly line work for people who've forgotten what feelings actually cost. The frustration peaked when Nickelback dominated rock radio with their relationship anthems and lifestyle celebration songs. Prine couldn't understand how audiences connected with what he considered completely artificial emotion. He told reporters that Nickelback proved people would rather feel manipulated than feel nothing at all. What really triggered Prine's anger was Nickelback's influence on rock songwriting and their normalization of cynical commercialism. He saw them as responsible for convincing an entire generation that authentic expression was less important than market appeal, describing their success as the victory of focus groups over human experience. The final straw came when Kroeger made comments about giving audiences what they want and the importance of commercial viability in modern music. Prine's reaction was devastating. He argued that Nickelback represented the death of rock's rebellious spirit, suggesting that their approach reduced music to emotional manipulation disguised as entertainment. Prine's hatred for Nickelback embodied his fear that popular music was losing its capacity to surprise, challenge, or genuinely move people. Train. The wedding reception. Music. Train's earnest romanticism and middle-age sentimentality made Prine question whether popular music had completely lost its edge. His exasperation with Train began with their transformation from alternative rock to mainstream pop rock with increasingly saccharine themes. He viewed Pat Monahan's heartfelt ballads and the band's celebration of conventional romance as proof that rock music had surrendered its capacity for genuine rebellion. Prine once described their evolution as alternative rock's transformation into wedding reception music. The irritation exploded when Prine achieved renewed success with songs like Hey Soul Sister and Drive By. Prine couldn't comprehend how their relentlessly upbeat approach to relationships resonated with adult audiences. He told friends that Prine represented emotional regression disguised as maturity. What really bothered Prine was Prine's influence on adult contemporary radio and their normalization of simple, uncomplicated emotional expression. He saw them as responsible for convincing middle-aged listeners that depth was less important than accessibility, describing their impact as teaching adults that feeling good is more important than feeling true. The nuclear moment occurred when Monahan made statements about music's power to celebrate life's simple pleasures and the importance of positivity in songwriting. Prine's response was characteristically measured but cutting. He suggested that Prine's version of happiness was emotional fast food for people who had given up on genuine complexity, arguing that real joy required acknowledgement of life's genuine difficulties. Prine's dismissal of Prine reflected his belief that mature songwriting should embrace emotional nuance rather than retreat into comfortable simplicity. Keith Urban's band, The Ultimate Betrayal. The most shocking revelation was that John Prine's deepest resentment was reserved for Keith Urban's backing band and the entire Nashville session musician establishment that enabled what he saw as country music's complete betrayal of its authentic roots. This wasn't about Urban personally, though Prine certainly had issues with his pop country approach. The real poison was directed at the anonymous musicians who enabled Nashville's transformation from storytelling capital to pop music factory. Prine saw these players as musical mercenaries who would perform any style for the right price, abandoning artistic integrity for financial security. The bitterness stemmed from Prine's observation that incredibly talented musicians were wasting their abilities backing artists who had no connection to country music's authentic traditions. He watched world-class players reducing their artistry to formulaic arrangements designed to maximize radio play rather than serve the song's emotional needs. What made this hatred so personal was Prine's relationship with Nashville's older generation of session players who had backed him during his early Atlantic Records years. He had witnessed the transformation from musicians, wah-woo, who served the song to players who served the market, describing the change as watching craftsmen become factory workers. The breaking point came when Prine realized that many of these same musicians would publicly praise his songwriting while privately participating in what he considered country music's commercialization. Their willingness to enable artistic compromise while claiming to respect authentic artistry felt like the ultimate hypocrisy. The psychological impact was profound. Prine's disillusionment with Nashville's session establishment contributed to his eventual move to independent labels and his increasing reliance on trusted collaborators who shared his commitment to authentic expression rather than commercial success. The gentle critic's legacy. John Prine's gentle exterior masked some surprisingly strong opinions about musical authenticity and artistic integrity. From country sellouts to rock formula followers, Prine's standards were higher than his humble demeanor suggested. His criticism came from a deep love of music and a belief that songs should tell honest stories about real people and real experiences. These weren't petty grievances, but principled stands about what music should be. Prine believed that authentic songwriting required courage to explore uncomfortable truths, embrace complexity, and resist the easy path of commercial appeal. His criticism of these artists reflected his lifelong commitment to honest storytelling and his fear that popular music was losing its soul to market forces and manufactured emotion. In the end, Prine's harsh words for these artists came from the same place as his beautiful songs, a deep understanding of what makes music meaningful and a refusal to accept anything less than truth in art.